All right, hello everyone. So now we're going to take a look at line graphs and how line graphs can be created using Microsoft Excel. Um, Line graphs are going to be created really similarly to bar graphs, but there are a few additional tweaks that you may need to make in order to have your graph turn out the way that it needs to. So I've already got some data set up here, and these are fake data. I just invented these from scratch. And the idea is that there's a person who wants to measure their heart rate as they're jogging for 10 minutes. So here's their resting heart rate, 65 beats per minute. And then you can see that their heart rate increases as they start to go for a leisurely jog. And then after 6 or 7 minutes, they slow down and just start walking, which is why their heart rate begins to drop again. So what I want to do is I want to highlight the data that I want to actually be in the graph, the data points that are the graph itself. So that's going to be the heart rates. So I highlight all of these. Just like with bar graphs, I'm going to go to Insert, and then I'm going to select the graph that I want, but this time I'm going to use a line graph. And the one that I'm going to use is going to be this one right here. And I'll show you a little bit later on why this one is a good one to use. So I click on this, and here's a partially completed graph. Obviously, it's got some elements missing, like the axis titles. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus here to add those in so that I don't forget to do that later. I can also see that my chart title is pretty awful. So let's go ahead and change that to something that's a little bit more appropriate. John Smith's heart rate while, jogging. There we go. The axis title over here is also not very good. I'm going to go ahead and change that one. And we're going to call this heart rate in beats per minute. And then the axis title down here, I have to change this as well, because this is going to be time. And this is going to be in minutes. Okay, now there's one final thing that we need to do to really clean up the way that this graph looks, and that is what we've got down here on the axis values. Now over here I've got minutes of 0 through 10. What was John Smith's heart rate before he started jogging? So at time 0, it was 65 beats per minute. That's right here, and it says it's time number 1, and it goes all the way to time number 11, but I want it to go from 0 to 10. So I'm going to have to make a couple of adjustments. The way that I'm going to make the first adjustment is to make sure that the numbers actually match up to the numbers in the data table. So I'm going to click on the values for the x-axis, and then I'm going to use the right click button so that I can select data. And as you can see, here's why it's choosing numbers 1 through 11. It's defaulting to that instead of going to 0 through 10. So I'm going to have to edit that. Click Edit. And it asks me, what labels do I want to choose? I'm just going to highlight. I want to choose that range of values there. I say OK. And now it's adjusted it to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And it looks pretty darn good down here. Now there's one last little tweak that you should make so that line graphs that have 0 as a value are lined up with the y-axis here. So you notice this little gap right here, this kind of strange little gap. What I want to do is I want to make this first data point where 0 is line up with the y-axis. So here's what I need to do. I'm going to right click on the values again. So right click, I'm going to format the axis. And then it's not super obvious here in Excel, so this is why I want to make sure to point this out to you so that it's clear. Now that I have the axis options, notice this one right here where it says axis position. I'm going to change it from between tick marks to on tick marks. And when I do this, watch what happens to the 0 that's on the time axis. Now it's clicked over, it's exactly where it needs to be. Now you can imagine that if you had a data point that was 0, 0, hopefully nobody has a heart rate of 0 beats per minute, But if you had some data where there was a data point that you needed to plot at the origin, you would need to make this kind of change so that that data point would be perfectly at the origin, 0, 0, right? The coordinates 0, 0. All right. Now, it's pretty much good to go. One of the reasons why I suggest that you use graphs that have the data points actually showing is because if those data points are missing, let's say I go ahead and I take those markers and I actually remove them. That's what Excel calls them, as markers. Now the graph looks nice and smooth, but where are the actual data? Did John Smith take his heart rate at 5 minutes, or did he take it at 5 minutes and 20 seconds? That would be right here. Well, he didn't take his data, his heart rate data at 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So when you've got a line like this that doesn't have any data showing, then you basically aren't telling the reader of the graph what values actually exist. So it's really important that when you choose a graph and you're making a line graph, that you actually have the markers over here chosen for you. Now, you can go ahead and adjust this so that they're different colors or shapes if you like, but you really do need to have those data points showing there. Okay? All right. That pretty much does it for the simple form of a line graph. I'm going to show you in the next episode how to create a line graph with multiple lines in it. All right, until then, see you there.